Hello everyone, for another video on transit to work. It's the only way I could find to produce videos more often and keep the presence more, keep the channel more alive with presence. So yeah, welcome back. Yesterday I made a program with a friend of mine, a teacher, geography teacher, also interested in geopolitics, and it's a regular program that we do. The panel is not always the same. It's in Portuguese. It's called Tanque de Ideias, which literally translated means tank of ideas or idea tank, which is kind of a parody to the think tanks, all the think tanks around in the information sphere. And I wanted to make a few comments about the Crocus Park City Hall terrorist attack, and it's becoming more and more evident about who is behind these deeds. Remember that Putin said, okay, this is done by Islamists, and we are they've caught perpetrators, they are arresting more people, they found more connections, they've connected a lot of points, but we want to know who are the bosses of this, who are the masterminds behind this, who told them, who ordered them. So literally they want to know who is the big fish. Of course, a lot of it can be quite a long story, and maybe I'm not the most appropriate person to tell it, especially in a short video like this. What I can say is, and then I'll point to some videos that you can watch and to have more detailed explanation. What I can say is that, of course, ISIS-K or ISIS or ISIL or IS, whatever you want to call it, just recall that this is a terrorist organization which was created by the US in the Middle East to fight against mainly the Assad regime, but also against Iranian assets, and one of the, I've mentioned this before, never forget this Islamist organization never attacked one single time Israel. Neither Israel attacked it as well. On the other hand, Americans have claimed that they were at war with ISIL. I remember Obama saying this, but it was dragging of defeat style making of war. So they never did anything, and after they were defeated in the Middle East, Americans actually provided transportation to them. We know a lot of them went to Ukraine. There are actually articles from 2015-16, if I'm not mistaken, saying about this. Some went to Afghanistan. I already mentioned these things in the past, but there is other aspects of that. Some of the perpetrators were Tajiks, and this is not this is an important and relevant information, because one of the goals of this attack is to destabilize Russia internally. One of the main goals about Operation Ukraine, about all this funding that Ukraine cannot fall and we're gonna help it no matter what. The main goal of this, of course, is to disintegrate. The ultimate goal, the strategic victory over Russia, is to disintegrate Russia in its several federations. several states. So Russia is a federation composed of state provinces, and so mainly the goal was to divide this huge territory into big ring, easy to divide and control smaller territories, to disintegrate Russia. Like, for example, in the same way that the Soviet Union has disintegrated, and so the former republics of the Soviet Union became independent countries, with all the problems that we know. And so Tajiks, being one of the one of the ethnicities also in very significant in numbers in Russia, in Russian society, with all this they generate a big hate towards these people, or to put it very straightforward, it gives incentive to create internal tensions, racial tensions towards, in this case, the Tajiks, which are in large number in the Russian Federation, for example, for work. And this is it is a very typical way of operations of the American and Israeli secret services when they want to destabilize other nations. They train these groups, and I wish the explanation could be easier, and you could say, oh, this people from this country who are involved in this, but these organizations many of them are cross-country organizations, including Turkey. Turkey has its share of fault in the deeds, its share of responsibility, I should say, in all this mess. Because Turkey only released the information of these guys being trained in a camp there near Istanbul after the attack had been done. Then they told the Russians, oh, we know that these guys were here, and so on and so on. And so this goes through a network of former trained, Al-Qaeda, newly trained, ISIS, whatever. ISIS in the bottom, if you want to sum it all up, it's everything and it's nothing. So it's actually the perfect scapegoat to blame in a situation like this. And then, of course, we have the plausible guilt invented by the West, which was a certainty, like minutes after the thing had done, after the attack had been done. They already knew. I mean, how can you know? How can you be sure? How can you be so naive to believe this? Or put it in another way, how can you be so arrogant in thinking that such simple and stupid arguments or evidence, if you want to call them, they're not evidence, of if such matter cannot be treated with a minimum investigation prior to the conclusions? No, they immediately jump into the conclusions. And this sounds like conspiracy, but it actually is. But it's not theoretical conspiracy, it's factual conspiracy. Because immediately the Western mainstream media got on board with it. Immediately. So it's even the duty of a journalist to investigate before reporting, at least a little bit. But no, they went with this one. But of course the Russians were fast to act. They caught the 4 perpetrators. They would confirm one of these guys had been seen with the troops which were preparing operations against Belgorod, in several images, pictures and videos. I mean, connections were too obvious. And what becomes more obvious is the excuses that the West tries to use to deflect. Because they immediately saw that ISIS theory was unsubstantiated. I mean, it's too vague. It's just a couple of guys taking a picture with the ISIS flag. And even if it's ISIS, like I've also mentioned previously, but who actually ordered and paid these guys to do this thing? So immediately the West forgets about the insisting on the ISIS narrative and begins to vigorously to protect, to try to deflect the Russian findings and the Russian first conclusions to protect Ukraine. Tries very hard to do this, to take Ukraine out of the picture, to take Victoria Nuland out of the picture, to accuse Russia of things that are not true, to put words in the mouth of, for example, Alexander Lukashenko, because Alexander, as you might know, Alexander Lukashenko has said the sentences like they wouldn't dare come to Belarusian because they knew we were prepared. Okay, this sentence in and of itself, it doesn't mean by far anything the West wants it to mean. The West wants to put a new meaning to it. The West says that Lukashenko was saying that they were first trying to flee to Belarusia, but they were stopped. They were like pushed away, deflected back. If someone knows a little bit about at least the relations between Belarus and Russia, and the proximity, the cohesion. Remember, for example, that one of the incursions into the Ukrainian territory by the Russian forces was made from Belarus. Can imagine a situation where these fugitives were going towards, and there are some guys on the end of the road they want to pass through, shooting at them or not letting them pass, and just like that. I mean, no, and there is no evidence of this whatsoever. They know the trajectory of the car, the Renault they were driving is known. It's known, and so they stick to the same road all the time. It's a road that goes directly from Moscow to Ukraine, to the Ukrainian border, the M3, and they stick to this road. Simple as that. So, but the West wants to find this. They want to find fragilities in the Russian side of story. But the Russians are the only ones who are doing any kind of investigation. How can the West or the Americans provide so solid affirmations, such solid statements? In their view, solid in their view, of course, if they haven't investigated anything whatsoever. That's also, it has to be at least a little bit suspect to the listener, right? But it's, for me, it's a little bit too much. I mean, it's the arrogance of just putting out these boogeyman stories, good against evil all the time. I mean, the Americans really think that the rest of the world is stupid, and their own voters, their own citizens are stupid. The European citizens are stupid, and some of them are, because I don't know if it's by the repetition of the lies that they become a narrative accepted. I don't know if it's because of that, but I think in such a case it is too obvious that I'm not saying, of course, I'm not making myself the conclusions of this case, but it becomes obvious that the Western narrative is flawed like hell, to say the least. I've spoken to a lot of people. I've spoken to some people that do analysis on this matter. People that live on the side of Russia, journalists, and it's amazing, to say the least, the magnitude of the lie. I mean, even after all the after all the, for example, Budanov's statements of he declaring that they would attack Russia inside, or for example this General Mark Milley saying that the average Russian should not be able to go to sleep without being fearful for his life during his sleep. This is actually declaring terrorism. I don't know if you understand, but this these are words of representative. Of course, General Mark Milley, I think he had already retired when he said these statements in an interview. He had his tongue more loose, but he said this nevertheless. Victoria Nuland talking about surprises that they had prepared for the Russians. We have found out some of those already, and this was most likely one of them. She had been in the beginning of March visiting Ukraine, and then she was dismissed or resigned not long after. Can't establish from memory the chronology, but it was important also to take her out of the picture, I think. And then you see the narrative shifting in the West. Then they say that they try to make rumors, because rumors fly very well, right? So rumors like the Russians did it, false flag attack, so they would galvanize the Russian people against the Ukrainians, which is utter nonsense as well, because they have no need for it. The simple fact is that they have no need of such things. The Americans had a lot of need for this when they attacked other countries, like weapons of mass destruction, links to terror, whatever. All fake, all fake. They needed this to galvanize their people, to get their people on board with them, to do for them to have the green card, the green light, or whatever. Forgive my English expression mixing. To do their wars. The Russians, on the other hand, do not need that. Election just took place. Putin won with almost 90% of the vote. Elections had a lot of observers and international observers. They were clean elections. I mean, you can argue about a lot of stuff, a lot of the internal politics of Russia, but you don't convince me with a simplistic narrative that is Stalin dictatorship style and people do not have any other choice but vote Putin. Well, you can put it that way, but it's not because they have a gun pointed to their head or if because they are coerced. It's because they understand that is the best choice for them. And so, if you visit Russia like I did a lot long ago, and I intend to repeat, I want to see more of it, I want to go deeper into it, I want to talk to more people. Eventually I'll have to return in the shortest time possible. If you go there, you have a normal citizen has about the same degree of freedom and well-being in average as most of the most developed European countries. Go to Moscow and see for yourself. Go to St. Petersburg. Go to Volgograd, which is a less I mean, it's not so what should I say, it's not like the jewel of the crown in urban wise in Russia. We know it's former Stalingrad, we know it has a historical importance, but it is not that big of a city. I mean, it's not comparable to Moscow or St. Petersburg. It has it's less famous. But go to cities like that, or go to smaller cities like Rostov. It's not that small, but it's still a smaller city, or other cities, and see the degree. See the degree of development and the way people live, the way people behave. Go to a pub, have a drink with a Russian. Go to a cafe, go to a restaurant, talk to people, and see the degree of liberty that you feel in their conversation, the kind of arguments they feel free to have with you even without knowing you. If you have the opportunity, do this, because it's a very interesting experience, I can assure you. And so yeah, I think a lot of pieces are connecting. Also, the FSB have found traces of large sums of money and cryptocurrencies traced back to Ukraine. And of course, Ukraine, truth must be said, Ukraine is a pawn, right? It's a pawn. It's a piece that it's moved by the US in the political chess, in the geopolitical chess. So yeah, you can maybe attribute some degree of blame, but none of this would go on in Ukraine. None of this criminal activity, Nazi activity, or whatever activities they go on there in order to conduct the policy that the Americans want them to conduct, if the Americans had not done what they done there. And it all goes back to that. And I know I hate to talk so generally and talk so simply, but what can I do in a video like this, right? Of course, I recommend you, for example, to see the analysis of Pepe Escobar, to see the analysis of Brian Berlatic, to see the analysis of the Duran. They do this for a living, so they go much more in depth. They have much more experience than I do. They go much more in depth. I try to do as best as I can, but I cannot. My opinion is not worth more. It's not than a simple citizen, a worker, not a specialist opinion. This is how much I value it. I do think everyone is entitled to their opinion, but I also do think that if you want to be entitled to have an opinion, you have at least to read, to always conserve a good amount of doubt on the back of your head for every subject, even if you are sure of the things that you are saying. So, summing it all up, I think Russia is on the right track, but the definitive conclusion can only be taken at the end of the investigations. In the meantime, you can go and put all the pieces together, listen to the biggest number of analysts that you can, pro and against all sides of the spectrum. This is very important. And that is why for example, I give you an example, when I saw that the West was claiming that Lukashenko had said that they were going towards Belarus, but then they decided to turn away because Belarus had stopped them, had deflected them somehow. I went to Russian publications and Russian newspapers to see the transcript of the words of Lukashenko, and then I found out, yeah, this is not true. This is the West twisting the speech. And so when you find things like this and you see this clear intention, why would they want to do this, right? This immediate question comes to your head. It's fishy, to say the least. Why? Okay, guys, I see you, if not in the morning, because I'm going to work now, maybe tomorrow afternoon. Also got a lot of things to do. And thanks for listening to my ramblings and to have the patience to indulge me in this short period of time. Bye bye.